Okay, today I'll give you a report of my learnings from the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report, which ranges between 2021 and 2022. And I've taken some excerpts that I found particularly meaningful that I'll share with you today. We've all, I think, heard this quote. It's now or never. If we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees C. And 1.5 degrees C is a place, is the spot where the IPCC is saying that things become irreversible. We see irreversible changes on the Earth, and we really start to see some fairly substantial impacts to the creatures of the Earth. We're already seeing impacts on creatures of the Earth and human civilization. And God forbid that things get to 2 degrees C or beyond, things get much, much worse. So as I said, the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report is really multiple reports. I found that there are reports from 3 working groups. Working group 1 is the physical science basis. Working group 2 are impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability, which actually I spent most of my time on. And working group 3, which is the mitigation of climate change. There will be another report coming out in September, which is the synthesis of all of these reports. So we can look forward to that. So from the physical science, it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. Human-induced climate change is already affecting many weather and climate extremes across the globe. The next quote, I think, is a little bit misleading. Global warming of 1.5 and 2 degrees C will be exceeded during the 21st century unless deep reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming decades. What they should really say is that unless we start making deep reductions right now. And I think that this is important from the physical science, that in order to limit warming, and this is something that we've heard in the news, this piece of information, in order to limit warming to around 1.5 degrees C, our target requires global greenhouse gas emissions to peak before 2025 at the latest and be reduced by nearly 45% by 2030. And we need to reduce methane at the same time. So this really points to the need for urgent action now. So our action is actually more urgent than the IPCC previously said, and that the complexity of this requires actions at a new scale. The report tends to say that while the IPCC observes actions by many countries and many regions, those actions are too small and too not scaled up enough and not across a broad enough area. So these actions, we need to take these actions at a new scale. And here's what I find really important: any further delay in concerted global action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. The good news from the impacts, adaptability, and vulnerability study, we can reduce the impacts if we adapt and mitigate, if we adapt to the changing conditions and start mitigating as well. Given that this is from the Adaptation and Vulnerability Report, their focus is on adaptation. But we need to be absolutely aware that our ability to adapt is constrained. It's constrained by limitations of the natural world and by our limitations as well. And that at higher degrees of warming, neither nature or we will be able to adapt. I found one striking statistic that at least half of global species have either moved towards the poles or moved to higher elevations. It's truly amazing. I find this good news, and I think it matches up with our work, that nature offers lots of untapped potential. I think we know that. I think Randy, our work with Randy and Reading Becoming Rooted has immersed us in this, that there's a lot nature will do and can do to bring down greenhouse gases. So protecting and restoring ecosystems is a key element for success, and the evidence indicates that in order to do this, we need to preserve and restore at a minimum 30% and more likely 50% of the Earth's ecosystems. So I think we know this too, that in order to build a sustainable world, we need fundamental changes in how society functions, including changes to underlying values. This word, worldviews, ideologies, social structures, and so on. I was struck by the worldviews and the work that we're doing with Dr. Woodley, and our work to make a change more to more of an indigenous worldview as opposed to the Western worldview. Climate resilient development involves everyone. No big surprise here. We don't have everyone on board yet, but yeah, that really resonated with me, and that in order to get to climate resilience, we need to engage all types of knowledge. This mirrors a statement that the Pope made in Laudato Si, that we need to bring all forms of knowledge to bear on our climate works, to scientific, indigenous, local knowledge, all forms of knowledge to achieve more effective and sustainable action that's locally appropriate. And to avoid what they've observed as, maladaptation. There have been, they've identified various places where we've maladapted and actually caused collateral damage because of our maladaptation. So there's a lot of emphasis on making sure that our adaptations are appropriate and incorporate many different types of knowledge, so that we avoid maladaptation and sacrificing either some creatures or some people. I think we know this also, that reducing greenhouse gas emissions across the energy sector, and this is from the mitigation report, requires major transitions, substantial reduction in fossil fuel use. They don't say 100% reduction, but substantial reduction in fossil fuel use, deployment of low emission energy sources, and efficiency and conservation, PSEF. Urban areas have opportunities to increase resource efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And you see the three areas that they touch upon: reducing or changing energy and material consumption, electrification, and enhancing carbon sequestration in the urban environment. So urban trees, urban forests. Shout out to Allison. Electric vehicles powered by low emissions electricity offer the largest decarbonization potential for land-based transport. And we should not forget about agriculture, forestry, and land use options, that they can do a lot to there's a lot that can be done in these sectors to reduce emissions and to sequester carbon, but they're not, again, they're not a silver bullet. They can't fully compensate for delaying elsewhere. So I think they're emphasizing that action is required everywhere. It's really a systemic and broad solutions that need to be brought to bear in order to solve climate change, address climate change and global warming. So again, broad and meaningful participation of everyone who's affected can builds trust and deepens support for transformative changes. So our work to build a movement, to increase awareness, to increase the number of people who are engaged and participating in the work is very important. And governance builds on engagement with all people and all people in all roles, from us as grassroots activists to politics to businesses, youth, indigenous peoples, and local communities. There is a lot of emphasis in the reports about local solutions, and that solutions really need to be local to be, it's both that solutions need to be local and at a global scale, but that local solutions are really the most effective because they're the most appropriate for that specific place. And I'll leave you with this. This is from Chair Ho-Sing Lee, and I'll just read it to you. I think it's a hopeful message, and this gives me hope. It also calls me to action. So we are at a crossroads. The decisions we make now can secure a livable future. We have the tools and know-how required to limit warming. There are policies, regulations, and market instruments that are proving effective. If these are scaled up and applied more widely and equitably, they can support deep emissions reductions and stimulate innovation. So that was my journey through the IPCC report. Again, it's really, I was struck by how many parallels there were in this between the work we're doing and points in the report. So it gives me confidence that we are moving in the right direction. Yes, we need more of us, but may we continue our work and broaden it. Thanks.